What's up? It's Mike Mal, and you are listening to the Athletor Podcast, where we dive into the processes, mindsets, strategies of some of the most successful athletes and coaches from all walks of life. Athletor Podcast coming at you. This week's guest is Luka Wick. He wrestles 165 for Cal Poly. And, one of the things that we really dig into is the way that Luka and his brothers came up through the sport and how it lends itself to longevity as opposed to burnout. And, I think you'd be really surprised to know that, he's not really into cutting weight, but one of the things that helped him turn the corner was an actual weight cutting scenario. Don't forget, he has a very interesting Mount Rushmore. It's all coming up on the podcast, Athletor Podcast, coming up next. Athletor Podcast coming back at you. Here we go. Luka Wick, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Excited.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Because I want to talk a little bit about your upbringing in the sport, first of all. So if you can kind of give us the origin story, and here's why I bring this up. To me, both you and Evan seem to be peaking at the right time in your life, right? Like,
yeah,
there are so many kids that come up through this sport, and by the time they're in 10th grade, they are just done with this stuff. Like, they're just done. Like, how often do you see that, especially in California?
Oh,
right? So
especially
if you can, especially in California. And I know the East Coast is bad with it too, for sure. But like I could rattle off 10 names, like off the top of my head, of California kids that were all world as 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th graders. And then you just never hear from them again. So my job is to pull out the process that made you what you are. So give us a little bit of the origin story when it comes to wrestling.
So me, Zander, and Evan all started at the same time. They were 11 years old, and I was like 5'6". I actually hated wrestling for about 8 years. Like, despised it with a passion. I did everything I could to not wrestle. I had to like make deals with my parents where it was like, if I won certain amount of matches, I could get like Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Godzilla figures, things like that. Like, they had to do things to keep me in it. I really didn't start liking it until probably my 8th grade year. So that kind of helped me to where I didn't have this, like, I guess, yes, I have wrestled for 17 years, but I don't count the first 8, if that makes sense.
You shouldn't, because there's a difference. No, really. And I'm not just saying this, like, there's a difference. There's a difference between just going to practice, going to a local match, and like going to like club practices where everybody's trying to beat your head. So I'm going to tell the story that I just told Joel. We have a lot of kids on our team right now in Poly, and we're going to get back to your origin story, but just because it's topical.
You're all good. Yeah.
We have a ton of kids. We have over 85 kids, and we have 3 mats, and it's getting a bit much, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to do cuts, right? Like don't get me wrong, he cut about 10 guys. In fact, one kid comes in the other day and was like, he's like, Coach, I'm gonna try for the team, but I can't be here today. He goes, next year, just come out next year. I'm like, holy shit, like, you just didn't. He's like, next year? He's like, next year you should come out. But so yesterday, it was a tough go. Like, don't get me wrong, this was not an easy go for anyone on the team.
Yeah.
And we're doing 30-second goes, which, as you know, as well as I do, are way harder than 3-minute goes. Like, 30-second goes are miserable because it's a full sprint. And then we did like 10 or 12 of them. It was a tough go. So on go number 8, he blows the whistle and he stops and he goes, okay, one more. And this one kid who probably been wrestling for 2 weeks, he just goes, oh, you're kidding. Like that. What? One of the coach, as the kid's laying on his back, just like just miserable. One of the coaches walks up to him and goes, are the evil thoughts creeping into your head right now? And the kid just looks at him, and the coach goes, you should listen to them.
Wow. Hey, we've all been there. Coach says
Oh
one
yeah,
more, one more, one more, and
yeah,
it's like,
yeah. One
dude,
more.
you said one more like 30 minutes ago.
You're a big liar face, sir. You are a big
Yeah.
old liar face. But to bring out the point that you were trying to make earlier, there's a difference between little kid club practices, little kid, recreational practices,
Yeah.
and being in this thing, right? And so they don't really count, right? Like that is just the fun, goofy part of the sport that everyone should experience, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And that honestly, I kind of did it to myself.
Hey, don't go anywhere. It's Mike. We'll get back to the podcast in just a second. We got to pay the bills though. Do you have an athlete that's looking to break into the social media space? We at athletorlive.com have a brand new in-depth tutorial done by none other than Caden Henshaw. If you don't know who Caden is, he's not even a Division I wrestler, yet he's got hundreds of thousands of engaged followers. Learn how to create engaging content, grow your followers, and open up new opportunities in the NIL space. Go to athletorlive.com/Caden and we'll give you the first module completely free.
We started practice and we played, I can't remember what's the game. So there's like two teams and you have just a headgear in the middle of the mat and you guys have to go like fight over the headgear.
Yeah, bone,
It's like bacon or
steel
something.
bone or whatever. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, every team has a different, but yeah, I think everyone's played that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like 5, 6 years old. So my mom's like, after that, we get a water break. And my mom's like, so do you want to wrestle? And I'm like, yeah, fine, sign me up. And then I just proceeded to get destroyed for 2 hours after that. Like I was getting thrown all over the place by this kid.
You
Actually,
got hoodwinked, dude.
Yeah, it was so bad.
Hoodwinked.
And I was like, I don't want to do this. And she's like, I already signed you up. And it was like $40. So you're gonna pay me back?
Bud.
And I'm like, no, I can't. So I got stuck doing it. And then it was kind of like, you're too young to stay at home. You're too young to stay at home by yourself. You got to come to practice. And if you're going to be at practice, you might as well wrestle. So that's how I kind of got roped into it. But yeah, I actually I think I had 2 8th grade years, which I mean, a lot of wrestlers do.
Yeah.
So my
first
red
redshirt year happens all the time.
Yeah, middle school redshirt.
My son, when he graduated from middle school, he put in it's. And by the way, Joel, you're gonna love this because you know my son pretty well. He sent he has a picture of his diploma. He's like, got my doctorate in middle school.
Yeah,
like that's funny, dude.
Oh yeah, that's hilarious. I like trying to explain it to, I call them NARPs, non-athlete regular people.
No,
it's impossible. They're like, so were you like really dumb? And I'm like, no, I actually I had fine grades. I actually almost was told intentionally fail so that we can hold you back. I didn't though. But yeah, I think so. My Cal USA State, I went like 0-2, and the next year. The next year I got second at both Tulsas and went like 10-1 at VAC duels and Wildwood duels, because like you said, it was a huge change from, man, I hate this. And this is just or just doing the fun stuff. And I didn't really want to be there. So I wasn't really trying to get better, to then I started lifting with my dad and I saw the change in my body from puberty and lifting. And I was like, oh, wow, I wonder if I can do the same thing in wrestling. And I started trying, and then all of a sudden it was like, holy crap, I'm actually pretty good at this thing.
Yeah, it's funny because you accumulate some of these skills, even in those little goofy, recreational practices, and you don't know you're doing it. And here's one of the dilemmas that I am faced with right now. And we'll get back to it, but we're sidetracking for a reason. I am training a group of younger girls, right? Like 8th, 9th, 10th grade. They didn't grow up from 5 years old. They don't know that they have to whizzer every single time. Like it's not a part of their DNA. And I'm why are you just laying down on takedowns? Like somebody gets to your leg. It's like somebody took a freaking sniper rifle to you. Like, no, you have to whizzer. These little things that sink into your brain, they're so valuable and you don't even think about it.
Yeah. And that's something I give huge props to coaches that have deal with little kids and like people who have not been in the sport. Cause it's easy for like most of the time, if I do privates and stuff, it's a kid who's already ranked in high school or on the cusp of being top 25 or something. So like they know how to wrestle. I'm already dealing with a good kid here, but like I ran over COVID, we had like a room, like an illegal room kind of. And there's a couple kids that
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Statutes of limitations is probably passed now, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. If specifically we rented it from, but no, I had kids, they'd be like locking hands like this. And I'd be like, oh, you like, don't do that. You want to lock hands like here. Like those are really the only ways. And they're like, why?
I don't know, because I said so, dummy.
Yeah, like I don't know. And then like I had like these little kids, like they like try to push your buttons too. Like one of the kids was like,
oh yeah,
this is no disrespect to anybody that goes to junior college, but I had a kid look up to me and he was like, aren't you going to junior college? And I'm like, what the hell? Like you're like 9 years old. What are you talking about? Like, are you trying to like diminish my wrestling ability by saying?
Are you knocking me down a peg right now?
Yeah, I was like, what are we talking about here? But yeah, like try to teach, because it's like trying to explain the word "the." It's like I don't know. It's just you just do it. You say it. I don't get it. Like,
dude, I'll take it a step further. I had kids when I first opened the club in New Jersey. And I'm not exaggerating. The level of athlete I take for granted, especially here in Poway, the level of athlete that I get. Dude, how about this? I had a kid. Now, this is, and if I'm going to be completely honest, this kid specifically, his name is Brandon Russo, nicest guy in the world. He and people that know me know that I place very little value on like accolades. He has been, over the course of my coaching career, my absolute greatest accomplishment. Okay, and I'll tell you why. When Brandon Russo came in day one, during warm-ups, I said skip, and he came over and he goes, I don't know how to skip. You ever tried to teach somebody how to skip, Luka Wick? That ain't easy, bud.
Yeah.
That is not easy. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know how to skip? You just freaking do it. Like, you just look at what he did. Yeah, okay, do it. And like, it looked bad. Like, it was just like him hopping on one foot. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be fun. But fast forward, that was his 7th grade year. He goes on to place in the state tournament in New Jersey, which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Now,
not at all.
We gained about 100 pounds to do it, right? Like,
I
remember him coming to me as a freshman in high school. Maybe he didn't place. I think he was around 12 now that I'm thinking about it. But either way, it's pretty darn close. To come from not being able to skip to, placing or coming close to placing in the state tournament, it's a big deal. But I remember he came to me after his freshman season, and he wrestled 135, and he got lit up like a Christmas tree all season long. And he goes, I think I'm going to go back down to 35. I go, you're an absolute crazy person. I don't know why you would do that. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, really. He's like, why? I'm like, well, A, cutting weight sucks. Like, no matter what.
Yeah.
And B, you're the slowest 35 pounder I've ever seen in my life. So maybe we get over a bar and maybe we lift it a lot. And he did. And he went from 135 to 171 to 215 to heavyweight in the next 3 years.
That's crazy.
And he goes on to place. Yeah, I mean, he knew, okay, we have a plan of attack that I can do, right? And then, look, he wasn't exactly, blinding anyone with his speed. So we got to learn how to hand fight. We got to learn how to dig an underhook. Well, those are kind of like cheat codes for high school wrestling. Like, if you're going to be honest, right? Like, they're kind of like, if you learn how to get a 2-on-1 or an underhook, kind of a cheat code.
Yeah. It's like learning legs on top. I mean, now it's a little bit
Yep.
more like everybody does it, but like my brothers,
Yeah.
Zander and Evan, like I felt like nobody was really riding legs, and now it's like if you don't ride legs, you can't ride on top.
It's
That's
really
almost
hard.
like
It's
yeah,
really, yeah.
it's kind
I
of
mean,
nuts.
they're few and far between. Few and far between. Okay, so let's get back to your high school career. Tell me when things really started to click. So you go from 0-2 at state to placing in Tulsa um, here in 8th grade. Is that kind of when things really started to change for you?
Yeah, that's when it really clicked. I mean, like I said, I honestly contribute a lot of it to lifting. Um, I will say I have pretty good genetics. You've seen my dad and my brothers and
Mm-hmm.
everything. I'm
Doesn't
pretty
hurt.
blessed with that. Yeah. And I was hitting
Mm-hmm.
puberty at the same time. So I literally went from I couldn't bench basically the bar comfortably. It was like awkward because I didn't know how to do it. So once I figured out how to bench, early November, my max was 85 pounds. And by the time it was New Year's, I could bench 135 for 5. And I had this build I have now as an 8th grader, which is
With a D cup. Got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Got it.
Actually, funny story. I was at Tulsa where I got second, and some kid from I can't remember if it was Montana or Colorado because I always get him confused with there's this other guy. So we're in line, and it's like the Parade of Champions or whatever, and he's like, "Oh my God, look, it's 3 fingers," and I'm like, "What?" And he walks up to me and he grabs 3 fingers like this, and he puts them under my chest and like cuffs my boob.
Boob.
And he's like, our whole team calls you 3 fingers. And I just confirmed that you're 3 fingers. And I was like, that is so unbelievably wild. And
Kids are wild, man.
yeah,
Oh, I love it.
unbelievable. I'm like, dude, I've never had a
Yeah.
conversation with you. And you just walked up and like just grabbed my chest. All right. Like,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Hey, by the way, we got a shout out. Unfortunately, Jack Roller passed away not too long ago. So that's a big loss for the wrestling world. He's been running Tulsa Nationals with his son Shane for, I mean, forever.
Yeah.
I can't think of a time where Tulsa Nationals wasn't a thing. And yeah, so unfortunately, Mr. Roller passed away. But that's a bummer. But all right,
Yeah.
talk to me about high school. What does high school wrestling look like for you? Where did you go to school? What was the atmosphere like?
So I went to this small little school called San Marino High School, and nobody probably knows that other than I went there, Zander and Evan went there, and Julian Flores went there, a couple other guys as well. But very academic school. Athletics was not big at all. It's kind of similar to Cal Poly, actually. Everybody's super focused on
Mhm.
grades, so um, it was it was kind of unique. So I came in as a freshman. I had Jordan and Reese Humphrey as my coaches, which is like
They're
it's
pretty
kind of
good.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of my practices actually, I didn't really have any good partners at the time. So a lot of my practices just consisted with, we called them like spar days. I would just spar with Reese Humphrey for like 30 minutes. And it was like 30 minutes of sparring and you're out. And that was it. And I was like, back then I was still in that mindset of like 3 hour practices, an hour and a half of
Mhm.
live. So it was kind of like, oh, whoa, this is awesome. Like I'm wrestling a world-class athlete for 30 minutes and I'm done for the day. Like this is crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Was
af-
that like a club setting? Or was that like the high school coaches?
that was actually like the high school coaches, but they also did the club
Really?
practice. So sometimes I'd have like my practice from 2 to 4, and then I'd have practice 6 to 8. Um,
Mhm.
so I was at school. I was at school all day, which I'm sure like most really good wrestlers I talk to, when you talk about high school wrestling, it's like I don't want to go back to that because it's like four and
Yeah.
a half hours of wrestling straight. Like just it's
Yeah.
grueling. I
Yeah.
couldn't make it through one of those practices now, like just with because I'm old. um,
Right.
but yeah, so and then I had a coaching change and I got Eddie Aguirre, but Jordan Humphrey stayed, and then Nate Parker was involved as well, and we just had like really long, grueling practices. I would kind of get an out when I'd get to wrestle with a coach, and I would just
Mhm.
basically spar slash live for an hour, and it was good. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what my practices were like. Nate Parker, um, his practices were like the 4.5 hour practices of just like
Oof.
technique, line drills, and then it would be like we didn't do much live, honestly, when he was around, and then it would be like an hour of conditioning. Those were like, I hated those.
Yeah.
That was miserable. But that was only for like the end of my junior year, probably.
Sure.
Yeah, but when it comes to competing, I remember my freshman year, I ended up getting 5th in state, and I remember it was kind of, that was still, I felt like I had a lot of pressure, which I kind of put the pressure on myself. But like my mom used to tell people like, "Oh, Luka's going to be a 4-time state champ." But like she was kind of like, it wasn't really meant to be like, you have to be a 4-time state champ, but it was like, I believe in you, you could be this. And that kind of put a lot of pressure on me. So I remember I lost to Sunny Santiago in like triple overtime, and I broke. I broke down. It was like the match after pigtails. So it was my first match, I think. Or no, it was my second match. And I was like freaking out. And I remember this random dude, I don't even remember who he was. He was talking to me, and he's like, "How old are you? You're a freshman?" He's like, "You're making it to day 2 of state, and you just lost to the guy who's in the semifinals in triple overtime. Why are you upset? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, this is California. Like, you're a stud." And I actually dropped on to Ricky Torres, who was a returning state placer. And I kind of like freaked out again, because I was like, oh my God, now I'm going to go 1-2 at the state tournament when people thought I was going to be a 4-time state champ. And I ended up pinning him, and I kind of like made my way all the way back. I beat Gabriel Cortez, who beat me at CIF earlier that year, and I placed. Sophomore year, pretty similar, fifth place.
Let's dig into that though. When whoever that person was that put things into perspective for you, did it help?
Oh yeah, it helped. A lot of times people talk to you, and it's kind of like you just tune them out, because you're like, this guy doesn't really know, like, I'm not like that. I'm a lot better than that. But this guy told me like some statistic that there were only like 5 freshmen past the weight of 132.
130 or something like that.
Yeah, that were, because
yeah.
he's like the only freshman that really place at state or do really well, at
106.
least at that time, were like, yeah, the little guys. Which, I mean, I was still 138, so it's still pretty little, but that was kind of where it started to shift.
Sure.
And it kind of just put into perspective where he's like, you realize that there's like 4 nationally ranked guys in your weight class. You're on the cusp of being nationally ranked. You're a freshman. You've got 3 more years. Like, this isn't a big deal. Like, you have like Super 32, Ironman, you have Doc B. All of these tournaments are harder than the state tournament. Can be. Doc B sometimes can be harder than the state tournament.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of like you put too much weight on it. And I feel like in college people do that as well with like NCAAs. Like, you have guys in the top 10 that don't place, and it's like, dude, what happened to him? And it's like, what do you mean what happened? It's the NCAA tournament. Like, it's the best 32 guys in the country in Division I wrestling.
Grinder, dude. Absolute meat grinder. Over 3 days. It's like, it's ridiculous.
I had Evan got 3rd, and the next year he got 4th. And someone texted me and said, dude, what happened to Evan? Like, did he get worse? And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, what are you talking about? It's crazy. I mean, like, I think it was that year Micaiah Lewis was the 8 seed and won. And Marinelli, I think, was the 1 seed, didn't place that year. So it's like, dude, anything could happen at that tournament.
Absolutely.
It's the same as the state tournament on a smaller scale, but similar.
Of course. But it's a good, like, if you're going to be honest, right? Like, there are very few events on a high school schedule that can actually mimic the NCAA tournament. Let's be completely honest about it. Number 1, 3 days. I don't know many tournaments that are 3 days. Okay. The California State Tournament is 3 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, weigh-ins every single day. Now, you get a pound every other day, but you still got to get on that scale every single day. That is not, like, people are like, oh, Super 32. I'm like, it's night before weigh-ins and there's 1 weigh-in for 3 days.
Yeah.
Not the same thing.
Yeah, people
That's
are
a different
weighing
thing,
in.
dude.
2 weight classes below their high school weight at that tournament.
Which is stupid, dude.
Yeah.
And again, I think Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, we pick on Super 32 quite a bit on this podcast. but it's like, you can't tell me that that's a direct indicator of success at the next level. You can't tell me that, because number one, the weigh-in thing. Number two, there's also like 1 minute periods on the back end of the bracket. Like that's not a real thing. If you get one kid from PA that knows how to ride a cross wrist, you're screwed, dude. Like, you're screwed.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of those matches are really close too, because it's like you said, it's like 1 minute goes. I get a takedown, ride you out, and then I just stall out on bottom and I win.
Absolutely. 100%. It's you're seeing it all the time. So the California State Tournament is 100% a good indicator of success at the next level, just because of the format. But there's a couple others. But I guess what I'm trying to get to is, where in your wrestling career, aside from 8th grade, where did you see yourself kind of jump levels?
Another big jump was, I was actually wrestling 152 my junior year. And I'm not a big advocate of cutting, but this actually will sound like I am. I was wrestling 152, but I only weighed like 156 probably. And or maybe 160 at the time. But I went and I stayed with Zander and Evan at the University of Wisconsin. Evan was going to wrestle at Midlands, so we were all going to watch him at Midlands over break. And my mom realized she hadn't bought Zander and I tickets, and the price was like, to scalp him, it was like $250 a session or something outrageous. It was basically like just as much as the NCAA tournament. So I'm like, hey, honestly, I've got Doc B in like 7 days. I don't need to really be spending 3 days sitting in a stadium, like eating junk food and like not doing anything. So I stayed back with Zander and we did like individual practices. And honestly, like, and this is what like a lot of great coaching is. He didn't teach me anything super technical. He was just like, dude, why don't you just like blast through guys? Like, you're shooting a double and you're like stopping. Like, we're just going to drill for a while, and you're only allowed to shoot double legs. And I'm just going to like wrestle you really hard. And whenever you feel me break out of position, double leg me. And I went to I ended up like losing a little bit of weight, and I called my coach. I was like, hey, I think I want to go 145, which was 149 for Doc B, because we had a +4, which is nuts. And I wrestled Doc B, and it was like, I think I like teched my first 2 matches. I had a couple good guys that I kind of ran through. I honestly kind of ran through the whole tournament. And it was just because I was like, I'm stronger than you, I'm faster than you, I'm more explosive, I'm just gonna do it. And it was kind of like, it took someone from an outside perspective being like, hey, like, I feel like you're holding back. Like, you're like twice this guy's size, and you're almost like, the second he sprawls, stopping. You could just plow right through him. And then I did.
There is something to be said for being in the right weight class. Not now, that's tricky, because we have gone at length in talking about, in fact, the last podcast that we did was starkly against weight cutting, right? But there is something to be said for being at the optimal weight. And I think that message gets completely bastardized by crazy ass dads. It gets bastardized, because 100%. Now you're not saying to a kid, hey, let's find the optimal weight, which is nutrition is on point, strength training is on point, conditioning is on point, and then you're talking about wrestling. You're talking about, now all of a sudden optimal weight becomes, well, let me get this kid in plastics and suck down to the absolute lowest weight that they can. That's a very different thing, dude. It doesn't seem like that was ever really part of your journey through this sport.
No, I mean, I did, like, when I was really little, I'd cut like a pound, which I remember like I'd throw up, and I had like really bad reactions when I was really little to cutting weight, which, I mean, is realistic. I'm like 50 pounds and just cut a pound. That's a decent amount of weight for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
2% of your body weight.
yeah.
It's not good.
But I hear parents, it's like kids like 80 pounds and they're like, yeah, I think I want to make him cut like 6-7 pounds. I'm like, dude, no, like he's like 7 years old, 6 years old. Why are we doing this? This is stupid. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I never really had that. I mean, even right now in college, which I think I'm a little bit small, I'd prefer to be able to cut a little bit more weight, but I weigh like 170, 172 wrestling at 165. Um, but that's also what we talk about optimal. You know, I've had hip surgery, I've had knee surgery. I can't really run anymore. I can't really
Right.
manage to do all these extra workouts of just go, go, go to lose weight because then I'm going to be at the tournament and my hip's going to kill me. So
Sure.
there's a little bit of that aspect as well. Like, do you really want to run yourself into the
Sure.
ground the entire week before the tournament, get to the tournament? Now you're hurting, you're tired, you're lethargic. Like, there's just no point. Um, but I've always lived by the rule 8 is great. That's what I feel.
8.
8 to 10 really, but 8 is great.
Yeah.
8 pounds, especially in high school, 8 pounds, I feel like is perfect. That's not,
Hmm.
oh, I got sick and I touched down to 141. Let me cut 8 pounds from
Right.
141. It's no. I'm walking around happy
No.
about 8 over.
Yeah. That's not
That's
a
what I feel.
bad rule of thumb, huh? That's actually a pretty good rule of thumb. You know, and of course it's a sliding scale. Upper weights could be
Yeah.
10,
Yeah, of
lower
course.
weights probably 6, somewhere around there. But the bulk of high school wrestling lives in that 130 to 160 range, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what most American males are sitting at in their teen years. And were there anything like, so was there anything that kind of made you realize like going up in weight? Because again, you were at 57 in college as well. It can't be an easy decision. Like, holy crap, man! Like 165, that's a big deal too.
Yeah. I actually started at 149 my redshirt year, but it's something I love lifting. I love working
Mhm.
out, and I always run really lean. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
just like cut down to 65. I feel fine, and I can get myself to where I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like craving food after weigh-ins to where like I will be able to stuff my face a little bit after weigh-ins, and I'm just like I know I wouldn't be able to make 57. I mean, I could if I really, really needed to,
Of
but it
course you
just
could.
it wouldn't be sustainable. I made
Mhm.
this is actually like two years ago now, but I remember I struggled. I was trying to bulk up to 157 to wrestle 157s, and I forgot that I had US Open like the next week. So
Mm.
I was up to like 170, and I'm like, okay, sweet, I'm finally at this is a really good weight for 157. At the time, I wanted to cut more, but that was like my really, really fat and happy, so I'd probably lose a couple pounds. And I remember I cut from that weight all the way down to 70 kilograms for the US Open. It was like
152.
yeah, 152, 153, and it was brutal. And that what stuck in my
Yeah.
head. I was like, okay, I can never again make 149, not possible. And I was like, 157 is now going to be a hard cut. And
Yeah.
once I had my hip surgery, I kind of got a little bit bigger, a little bit more like muscular, and I was like, I don't really want to lose this muscle. The only way I'm gonna be able to get back down to 157 again is if I lose a little bit of muscle, and I don't want to do that because a lot of my
Hmm.
good wrestling
Okay.
comes from my strength. I feel like.
Sure. Sure. Both in the neutral position and on top. I'd agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
You know, get like, looking at you this past weekend, I got to tell you, being underneath there looked freaking miserable. Miserable. Talk to me a little bit about how both Zander and Evan have kind of affected your top game. Because it seems like you got that boot in now and you're going
Hmm.
across the body real well and you're really putting a lot of pressure on top.
Yeah. So honestly, most people assume that Xander and Evan showed me everything I knew. That I didn't really work with Xander and Evan until like the end of my high school, and now that I'm in college and they were here, so
Mm.
um, I developed my left leg in and cradle just from seeing Evan hit it at a tournament. And I was at a tournament. I was
That's
actually
funny.
at the Tulsa tournament. I lost my first match to Victor Voinovich because we weren't allowed to go to the coaches meeting, so I didn't know I had to wear headgear. So I got dinged a point and I lost 1-0. So first match at Tulsa, I came back and won true second, and I was in my next match on top, and I like landed with my leg in, and I was like, oh, like Evan hits a cradle from here, and I just like did it. I think I pinned every single kid in that tournament through true second, actually, except for technically my third place match. I had Whitcraft. He's at Oklahoma State now, I think. Or at least he was at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reese's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was actually losing third period, chose top, turned him, and won the match. And I was like, this is it. This is what I do now. Since then, I've done it. Obviously, working with Evan now, I work on things like catching that wrist. You know, you guys posting, you pull the wrist down to their leg so that you can cradle it easy. Things like that. So fine tuning the leg in and cradling from there, I've done with Evan. And Zander really helped me because all of Zander's wrestling is really focused on hips. So like if I can't get my leg in, I'm just focused on controlling your hips. You know, oh, you want to go to the right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll push you even farther to the right. Oh, you want to go to the right? Pull you left.
Right.
You want to get up? I'm pulling your hips down. Like I'm just constantly moving your hips, so you can't really move, or just holding your hips. And that's what it's. A lot of people don't understand on top and bottom. It's like on bottom, I need to get my hips away from you. On top, I need to keep your hips on my hips. Really,
Glue.
You're not moving your hips.
Yeah, that's something that like I don't know that gets enough. Like you look like an absolute, like it looks suffocating down there for that poor guy from Stanford this past weekend. It looked really good. All right, let's switch gears a little bit though. The current climate of college wrestling is in so much flux. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about NIL and how that kind of affected your wrestling career over the last couple of years.
On it, so I don't know. I haven't gotten like NIL deals where I'm getting like a lot of money or anything. So all my stuff's very small. So like I have a local business called Hoagies, and they saw one of my viral videos on like TikTok and then Instagram, so they hit me up and they're basically like, hey, you can come in, get free food, just kind of post this on our story, let people know what you think of the food, things like that. And then I just signed with Rudis actually. I have a ambassadorship, and I basically just get like gear to post. Very transactional. Hey,
right.
Do you want these pair of shoes before they come out, and you could do a post on them. And very simple like that. Seeing these really big NILs is crazy.
Now I'm going to pause the story there though. You might have more information on some of these outlandish numbers that we're all hearing about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I believe all of them.
I don't believe all of them. No. Like I think people also exaggerate them, hoping they'll get more money from other schools. Like this isn't just me talking about him negatively at all. But so if I tell the story at all, everybody's gonna know who it is. So I'll just say who it is. So AJ Ferrari was at Bakersfield, and Evan was wrestling with Bakersfield. Right. And he's saying these like D2 schools or just these certain schools are offering these outlandish numbers. And I'm like, dude, that's not like, no way. Like we couldn't do that for anybody at Cal Poly. Right. It's like, yeah, we don't have a ton of funding, but like we're a Division I program and that number is unfathomable to us. Our locker room didn't cost that much money. Like nothing, no way. So I think there is a lot of lying about that stuff. And I think he was telling Evan, and I think he was kind of telling Evan, hoping, oh, maybe he'll tell the Bakersfield coaches or maybe the Cal Poly coaches. We weren't really like involved with him. So I'm not really Cal Poly, but probably Bakersfield. And like, oh, maybe if I tell him these really high numbers, he'll tell the coaches they got to offer me more money. But yeah, I've heard crazy, just like, I'm not going to say names and numbers, but like I've just heard some schools that have like just like these funds with like certain names, like anything it takes. It's like, dude, this is wild. And it's straight up. I mean, I don't know how they do it legally, because to me it just sounds like the deal is come to our school and wrestle. Here's 500 grand.
Yeah, I think that's going to change here very, very soon. I don't know that I can't really get into the details of it, but there's going to be some court mandates coming down the pipe within the next 2 years that I don't know, because you got to remember what NIL started as, or at least the thought process behind it was a college athlete can now make money on their name, their image, and their likeness. And that is not the same thing as simply professional sports, right? That's not the same thing. You are not paying a specific amount of money just to put a singlet on and wrestle. The idea was to have that hoagie place give you an exchange for using your platform, your name, your image, and your likeness.
Yes.
And I think that as long as we all kind of agree that those numbers, while most of them are probably inflated quite a bit, even if they're 50% of what we're actually hearing, it's still unsustainable. It's still completely unsustainable for 99.9% of college wrestling. Yeah. Now, that said, there has to be a checks and balances somewhere, right? And I think I have a strong assumption based on conversations that I've had that there will be more checks and balances. Now, look, is there going to be loopholes? For sure. Are there 100%. Going to be guys and teams that find a way to simply pay athletes to come and wrestle for them? Yes, 100%. But that said, I'm hearing $400,000 a year for 5 years.
So
that's a lot of money.
A lot of the stuff I'm hearing is so on the lower, which I kind of agree with somewhat because it is performance based, but a lot of these schools are saying, okay, we'll give you a $25,000 signing bonus, which even that I'm kind of like, oh my God, 25 grand, like on top of your scholarship that you're technically probably making money from because you're going to be living really cheaply, especially cutting weight, not buying food. $25,000 signing bonus. And then if you make the starting lineup, then we'll give you like your 100,000, which it's like, okay, well, if this kid's that good, we know he's going to make the starting lineup. And then, if you All-American, we'll give you another bonus, another 100 grand bonus or something. And then there's deals like that I'm hearing of. And then there's deals, okay, you're a 5th-year transfer. We'll give you $300,000 for this 1 year. Outrageous. But we'll make it $1 million if you train at the RTC for 3 years after. But that $1 million is going to be like, or that extra 700,000 is basically, what would that be? 233 grand a year.
Yeah, over the course of
3 years,
whatever it is.
Yeah,
yeah.
Which is still like, as a wrestler, making $230,000 a year, like a coach, but not many.
Dude, that's like NFL money. Like,
yeah. No,
like if you're on a rookie deal, I don't even know if you're making that much.
Yeah, which
that's a lot of money, dude.
That makes me wonder how much are football players making? Because if wrestlers are making in 6 figures,
I don't know. Again, I just don't know what to believe, man. Because I'm hearing the same numbers you are, but I haven't seen any checks. I'm not privy to the information. So it's like, I just don't know how much of this stuff to believe and what not to. But I do think it's going to change though.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be more visible too. Like as college athletes, a lot of us are kind of like young and dumb with our money and stuff. You'd think people would be driving around and like, maybe you see a Lamborghini from somebody. It's like,
right.
How's AJ Ferrari?
But you don't.
Ferrari, like you don't.
You don't.
So there's kind of that, but I wonder if
Yeah,
it's
trust me.
maybe
If I had that kind of money, bro, there would be clues. 100%. There would
you'd
be
be signed.
clues.
Yeah.
And I'm not young and dumb. I'm dumb, just not young anymore. But there would be, you would know. You'd have a good idea that I had that kind of cash.
Yeah, even simple stuff like, oh, don't worry, I'll pay. I'll pay for us for the meal.
Yeah.
Things like that. Taking my team to dinner,
Yeah.
like, or I'd probably buy a condo, buy a house, start leasing it out.
Yeah.
Something like
100%. Yeah.
something would be visible. I mean, I have rich friends, and it's like even when you're modest, we can tell.
For sure. 100%. Yeah,
but
that
yeah.
makes sense. Because again, you don't see too many kids that go, yeah, I just bought my second rental property in college.
Yeah, no.
Did you? You know?
Yeah.
So, all right. Joel, what
Hey,
else, brother? Go ahead.
I'm curious. Obviously, you don't necessarily have some of these huge, crazy number NIL deals, but what does that process look like for you to go out and like find a local business or reach out to Rudis, and like how does that conversation start, and then how do you like actually like turn that into like, okay, like let's negotiate for some shoes or whatever?
Yeah. So when it comes to local businesses, a lot of like with Hoagies specifically, they actually reached out to me. Um, it was actually the manager at the time I don't know if you guys have seen I had a viral video on TikTok where I was benching 410 and I dropped it and it almost cut me in
No.
half. Yeah, like completely
Jeez
dropped.
Louise.
Yeah, so I had like 7 million views or something on that. I was at Bradley Martin's gym. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
Mhm.
And he like posted it. He talked about it and stuff. So it was kind of like it was big in the fitness community. And the owner and the manager saw it. And initially the manager hit me up and was like, "Oh, I just saw your bio. Like, I didn't know you go to Cal Poly. Like, you should come into Hoagie's, check this place out." So then I went there. They like comped me a meal. We talked for a little bit, and that was kind of that. It was like, oh, maybe we could work out some kind of deal. I think at the time NIL wasn't really fully understood yet.
Mhm.
So we actually waited a year, and then the owner hit me up and was like, "Hey, let's get lunch." And we got lunch, and we talked about possibly hooking something up with the team. Maybe we come and bring burritos at the duels or something, and then we sell them to other people, but we give you guys a free burrito after weigh-ins or something. And I'm like, "Oh, dude, that'd be sick." And it kind of progressed into, okay, well, how about anytime you come in, you get a free meal, and you just post us on your Instagram story. Kind of let kids around campus know that like this is your spot, like you guys like this. And he's like, "I'd love to do something with the team though." So I'm like, "Hey, what if we do guys on the team get like 15%? Same thing, but they just get like 10, 15% off. They post on their stories, they get 10, 15% off of Hoagies." And that's kind of how it started. I don't know if they do things with other teams, but I know there's some local places that do stuff with the football team specifically, where they'll bring them
Mhm.
like a bunch of meals and certain guys on the team can go and get free stuff. But it used to be these college towns, they would all just put the posters of the football teams up, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, we support the football team," you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, you don't know anything about the football team, and the football team comes in here, they got to pay just like everybody else. They don't get any special treatment. Now it's we got a poster of our football team. We support the football team. The football team likes us. They come here. They get free food. Now with the wrestling team, it's the wrestling team loves Hoagies. Um, they post about Hoagies. We all come here to hang out and eat, which it is actually great food. I'm not going to post that it's great food unless it's actually great food. It actually is bomb.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Rudis actually, I have a let me see what the name for it was. I asked him if I could share his name and everything before I came on here. Let me pull this up. My marketing partner, Forrest Kobayashi.
Okay.
Great dude. My buddy has he's got a startup doing with like ticket sales and things like that, and he met this guy, and this guy's like, "Hey, I'm starting an NIL business, working with me," and he was like, "What's one company that comes to your mind that you would want to work with, like the dream company?" I was like, I mean, they would never take me, but like I'd love to do Rudis because I love Rudis shoes. I wear Rudis gear like since they came out. Like that's all I wear.
Yeah.
And he was like, "All right, that's cool. Any others?" And then we kind of just like spitballed for a little bit. And a week later, he's like, "All right, I'm getting in a meeting with like somebody at Rudis to talk about you. And they got on, and he was like, I don't know if I can say the person that's on Rudis with me, but he's like,
Doesn't matter.
they love your content. They love your content. They'd love to work with you. Like they'll do whatever. Like it'll be awesome. We'll make a contract. And yeah, like supposedly they saw my page and they were like, we love his content. We love that he posts. And it really stems from I'm active on social media. I have a decent
Sure.
following that gets engagement. Because I could have 20,000 followers, but I'm just posting a bunch of nonsense and nobody comments. Nobody cares about my content. But they're like, no, we love his like it's specific content with all I really post about is wrestling and
And lifting. Yeah.
Yeah, wrestling and lifting because it's really my whole life. I don't really have a life outside of that, to be honest. So that's all I post about. And they love that. So it was like, we'll send you a gear package. We could do some posts. We had a little bit of troubleshooting around rules because Cal Poly is a Adidas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we had to go around rules with that. Kind of hard to say
that's pretty
specifically
easy
with that.
No, I understand. No, but that stuff can be easy though. Like just don't do it in the wrestling room. Don't do it on competition day. It's pretty easy, dude.
So technically, like I didn't get anything from the school technically in paper saying I could have this deal with Rudis, but
right.
I got the okay behind the scenes, and they're like, hey, worst case, just like you'll get a warning the first time, and then you could just like stop, figure something out with Rudis, and like it won't be a big deal. But I can post anything I want about Rudis, and I can have whatever deals I want with any brands. I just technically at competition, I'm supposed to be in Adidas gear. But they're like, you can, like one of my coaches was like, dude, we could set you up and put you on the mat and like you could wear all Rudis gear if you want and get your hand raised and pretend like you wore Rudis gear. I don't do that.
Sure.
Right. But he's like,
but it could be done.
Right? Yeah, it could be done. He's like, they basically told me, my AD, everybody told me, they're like, any brand that you want to support, any brand that you're collaborating with, you can. It's just on the contract, it says you have to wear this during this match, during this time. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the complication, which I do still wear Rudis shoes at competition. I'm on paper, I'm supposed to wear Adidas. And I don't think I can get in trouble for saying this, Adidas but I hate Adidas shoes. They just don't work for my feet specifically. I know a lot of people like them. They're great shoes. I don't want to say they're bad shoes, but Rudis is perfect for me. I don't get blisters on my feet. Like they just feel great. So I need to wear Rudis. But they said specifically Adidas would have to like watch me compete in a match, go to the AD, go to the athletic department and say, hey, we saw Luka Wick was wearing non-Adidas wrestling shoes at this tournament. He needs to stop. Which they don't really care enough.
They got bigger fish.
I think Adidas has bigger fish to fry.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're gonna be like, this kid's not wearing Adidas shoes. Like they don't care. But everything else is Adidas. My headgear's Adidas. My singlets Adidas. Everything's Adidas. So it's not a big deal. But yeah, that's very transactional. That's what most NIL deals are. I've talked to other companies about things, and I've turned some companies down just because I'm like, I don't really like this product. I don't want to promote something I don't like. But yeah,
look at you with scruples and all.
Yeah, distinguished. I've got morals.
That's awesome. Yeah, just a couple. All right, what else, Joel? Anything else before we get to our quick questions?
No, let's bring it home.
Let's go. All right, don't think about these. The first one should be easy, but try your best just to fire away. Okay, best wrestling shoe of all time.
Sly Fox's Rudis.
I dig those, dude. I have a black and gold pair. They're really, really good.
I got the red, white, and blue.
They're good shoes. Yeah, they're good shoes, dude.
Yeah.
All right, next one. You only get 4. They got to be American. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Immediately, you got to go John Azevedo. Immediately, John Azevedo.
John Azevedo.
Is
that his first time on the list?
That's the first one for Coach John.
Really?
That's good. Yeah.
Well, I'll throw another one with you. How about Lee Kemp?
Good. Yes. Love it. 3-timer.
Cale Sanderson. Obviously, he's got to be on that list. And then just Dave Schultz.
Nice.
That's
Keeping it Cali. No, that's a good one. Because people don't realize that Acevedo was deeply involved with Schultz, like both he and Mark. Like people don't realize, like a lot, like they looked at him as he was the savant, right? Like a lot of people don't realize just how influential Coach Acevedo has been in the wrestling community for so many years.
I'll be anywhere. I was at the Mid-State Fair as security, and some dude comes up to me and he's like, "Do you know you're on the wrestling team, right? You know John Acevedo? You know, he got my pastor into religion, into being a Christian." And I'm like, "Oh no way, he's here right now. John Acevedo is here today." And I got them to meet together, and it's like the influence that man has had on so many people's lives. I mean, even with me, I really didn't start getting good at wrestling or having fun until I met John Acevedo. He wasn't my high school coach, but he was my club coach through middle school, and then now he's one of the RTC coach, I guess. And man, he is just like, he's so calm and just knows so much. It's unbelievable to have a man like that. Like, hey, you're just like, you're kind of just like at practice. You'll just be like, you'll be in the middle of live, and like you could actually be in the middle of a go, and he'll be like, how do you feel when like you are kind of coming out of your stance a little bit like that when you're switching your feet? And I'm like, I didn't even know I was doing that. Just minute little things. He just all the time, just like slightly in your ear. He's like, hey, try to like get a little bit deeper on that tricep tie. You're not really getting that. And it's stuff like, it's basic stuff, but it's like,
right.
Just having that, like, it's just that very fine tuning of the super specific things he's the best at.
Yeah, dude's aces too, and like just P.S. just an awesome human being, right?
Yeah.
Like just a really, really great human being.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty helpful as well. All right, last one. You have a magic wand, and you can change one thing about the sport, and it changes immediately. What would you change?
Oh man, I've thought about this so much, and there's so many different options, but I have to go with making it freestyle. I say we get rid of folk style completely.
Yeah, Evan said the same thing, by the way. Evan said the same thing. He's like, who wants to watch top? And this is coming from like an absolute hammer on top. Like,
yeah.
Well,
I
who
love
wants to watch top wrestling?
Folk style, yeah.
Yeah.
It's boring. People don't understand the rules, like and like there's a little bit of, I could be finishing folk style season and folk style grind of college and everything, and it's like I don't really have that. Finally, I get a break. I get my 2-week break for the year. It's like, oh my God, like US Open's coming up. Like I get to wrestle freestyle. That's like immediately that switches. I wrestle Evan freestyle in season, and that honestly, I think that's what keeps me sane through like the long college season.
Dude, we used to do that all the time. When I was a college coach, we'd have Greco days. Like Greco is it's a fun way of like, and we would do that all the time, dude. Yeah, it's a mental break. Yeah, right? Because if like by February, if I see one more mat return, I want to puke, dude. Yep. I want to freaking puke. You know?
It's, and like the thing that really kills me is Navy rides. Like the Navy ride, the like squeeze your leg and I got your ankle back and I've got just a claw and a spiral and I'm not moving. Like, I don't know. It's
boring. It's a grind for sure.
Yeah. And it's horrible being down there. I'm trying to get off bottom and the ref is like, action. I'm like, dude, I'm trying. Trust me, I don't want to be down here.
You don't think I want to get out?
Yeah. And then you get called for stalling and it's like, this guy's just laying on top of me with 2 boots in. Yeah. This guy's just clamping my leg and choking me out. I can't move.
100%. Yeah. I look, I think it would change a lot. And look, the girls are getting it right.
Yeah.
The girls are getting it right.
I'm so, like, you have no idea how jealous I am of that. I was coaching high school girls, like at the end of my high school career when we had that little COVID room. I had my ACL surgery, so I wasn't wrestling, and I was coaching high school girls, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going into freestyle when we go to college. And I remember it was like, I didn't know at the time, so it was baffling to me, but I was so jealous. And like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys know, but I got a mean chest wrap. And that's like,
Yeah.
I get way more satisfaction from hitting a nice chest wrap than I do pinning someone in a cradle.
100%.
So
100%. Yeah. It's pretty. Yeah. But again, you're preaching to the converted here.
Yeah.
All right. Luka Wick, thank you so much for coming on this time, brother. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome. It's kind of like my first podcast,
All right.
really.
Hey, there you
Yeah.
go. Got your
Awesome.
podcast virginity taken today. Thank you so much again, brother.
Great conversations.
Wait, don't go anywhere before you hit that next button. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, do us a huge favor. Click that subscribe button. And if you're so inclined, leave a review and share it.